Brought to you by Volkswagen. It's not a car, it's a Volkswagen.
Good afternoon, everybody. From Long Beach, California, I'm Bob Jenkins. This is Larry Newber, and this is the first Robert Bosch VW Super Vee race of 1985. In the past, this division has been a training ground for drivers who seek higher aspirations, and certainly for this race, we have two new faces up front.
Well, that seems to be the way it goes in Super Vee racing. First, Ken Johnson will sit on the pole today's race. He's the guy who sold himself to the Provimi Vio racing team over the winter. Young Davy Jones, still just a teenager, but very, very fast. Looks like he's in America for a full season of automobile racing. Now, both of these guys expect to do very well today, of course, but also for the whole season. They may be the two going at it for the points championship.
The course is 1.67 miles in length through the streets of Long Beach. Well, a look at the starting lineup now for today's Super Vee race here at Long Beach. On the front row will be Ken Johnson and Davy Jones. Row number 2, car 28, Gerald Rice and Mike Groff in 14. The third row, Jeff McPherson in car 3 and John Stephanus in 21. The fourth row, Kim Campbell in car 19 and Tommy Byrne in 58. In row number 5, Ted Prappis in number 98, Justin Ravine in 41. In the sixth row, Mike Cooper in car number 50, along with Kerry Brin in number 11. In the seventh row, Peter Pander in number 9 and Jeff Andretti in 43. And in the eighth row, Mike Fulmer in car 16 and Craig Hogan in car number 44. There are 40 cars that are starting this race here today, and the pace car is moving through the field and about to lead them away for a pace lap.
Bob is yet another example of what we were referring to at the top of the show about how this division has proven to be a springboard to other types of racing. The three people who dominated Super Vee racing in 1984, Ludwig Heimrath Jr., Chip Robinson, and champion Arie Luyendyk, they have all moved on to another form of racing. There are only two people in this field who won races last year. Altogether, only 5 different people won main events in Super Vees in '84. Ted Prappis and Jeff McPherson, the only two have qualified for today's race, who won last year.
The course here at Long Beach, as we said, is 1.67 miles in length. There are 11 turns, 5 of them left-handers and 6 of them right-handers. And they're using, of course, the portable concrete barriers. The 40-car starting field for the Super Vee race beginning to move away for a pace lap.
Bob, this is a very good course, by the way, for Super Vees. It has just the right amount of long straightaways for speed and tight corners. These cars should really maneuver quite well around the course here at Long Beach. Today's field is an interesting blend of some people who've been around Super Vees for the last 3 or 4 years, but there's also a lot of very young lion-type drivers, guys who are really trying to make a name for themselves in American racing. There are a lot of people whose car around there, and you're coming up to this section of the racetrack, a real tight right-hander hairpin, which leads onto the main straightaway, which is not really a main straightaway. It's shaped like a tri-oval.
All right, the cars move out of corner number 11 onto the front stretch, which is not really a straightaway. There is a sweeping right-hand turn in the middle of it, and as they come down, they receive the green flag, and this race is underway. Should be some tight action here in corner number 1 as they race down to this right-hander.
Going into number 1 is going to be Jones or Johnson. Let's wait and see. Here they come. Down to number 1. Quick slowdown as they come into the corner. Downshift. It's definitely Davy Jones. Tight action. Oh, looks like Ted Prappis made contact with somebody in the field. I don't know if it damaged Ted's car or not, but there he is, Bob, in the middle of the pack in the blue and white car. Prappis has got body damage already.
So there are a lot of action in corners number 1 and 2. Now the field begins to get strung out somewhat as Davy Jones has the lead, followed by Ken Johnson and then Gerald Rice running in third spot. They move through corner number 5 into corner number 6, and the field, as you can see, now getting strung out in single file order.
Bob, the other guy in a hurry was that yellow car right there going by the screen. That's Tommy Byrne from England. I saw him move to the outside as the green flag dropped. He was looking for room around turns 2, 3, and 4, but I don't think he made up too much ground, but he sure did try real hard as the green flag dropped.
Through corner number 9, now into corner number 10, looking for the hairpin. There they are moving through it onto the front stretch once again, completing lap number 1, and the leader is Davy Jones in car number 2. Followed by Ken Johnson in car number 1.
Now, something to watch for. Davy Jones is the man here, despite his youthful age, that has all of the experience. Ken Johnson, not quite as experienced in this type of car, this type of horsepower weight ratio.
We have an accident. It involves at least Jeff Andretti in 43, the other white car there. That's Doug Clark in number 15, and the front end of that car is damaged badly. He has had hard contact with either a car or a concrete barrier.
And Bob, that's right here on the main straight, right underneath the Bridgestone Bridge. Doug beginning to move around, somebody darting into the pits. Doug appears to be okay. Yes, he's removing the steering wheel. Safety crewman comes out, checks on him. Doug says, hey, I'm okay. We got to get this mess out of here before the field comes around.
There is a lot of debris on the racetrack. Meanwhile, the race continues because this is a road course, the yellow is only in the area of the accident, and they can race at any other location on the track. There is Jones, followed by Johnson, and then Gerald Rice running in third position. So Jeff Andretti and Doug Clark both have crashed here in the early stages of this Super Vee race here at Long Beach. And as you can see, the field moves by now, and the yellow flags are being displayed. So we will be back with more of this Robert Bosch VW Super Vee race here at Long Beach, California. In just a moment, the leaders, Jones, Johnson, Rice, Groff, and McPherson. Back at Long Beach, where the Super Vee race is continuing with Davy Jones in the lead and Ken Johnson running in second spot and Gerald Rice in third. And now that battle for second place begins to heat up just a little bit as Darrell Rice has closed in on Ken Johnson, car number one.
Well, Gerald Rice is another man who's very experienced in this type of racing. Now watch Gerald try to go to work on young Ken Johnson. I say young in terms of his experience behind the wheel of a Super Vee. Ken Johnson's 22 years of age. Gerald Rice is about that old too, but Rice has been running Super Vees with regularity for the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Ken Johnson began his racing career in dirt karting and became the Southern California karting champ in 1978. Right now running in second spot, Gerald Rice in the red car number 28 is third as the cars once again move down this front stretch here at Long Beach and passing by the Queen Mary in the background.
You know, on the big tracks, there's a lot of talk about drafting and the effects of the air. On a track like this, it's not quite so prominent, but this front stretch is so long, Bob, that there is some drafting that can go on. And if you're positioned in just the right place behind the guy you're pursuing, you can really get a little bit of a boost coming down such a long straightaway like that. As we mentioned earlier, it's not really a straightaway. It's kind of fun because it's a big sweeping arc of a straightaway, almost a turn. It's like a trioval running down south on the super speedway.
As far as a road course is concerned, though, this has to be one of the fastest road courses on the circuit because of the front stretch and because of the back stretch along Seaside Way. Now, these cars can get up to quite a few miles an hour before having to slow down for a corner.
Yeah, they really can. Now, here we have a battle of the Ralt versus the Anson. Now, those are the two dominant chassis. The Ralt, by far and away, the most dominant. The vast majority of the field has the Ralt design. Now, it's evolutionary. This is like the 5th year the Ralts have dominated this type of racing. There are new suspension parts there. They say the aerodynamics are improved, and by far and away, it's the most popular choice. That Anson, that red car, it's almost a cross between an Indy car, that Lola design, and a Formula One car. There's been extensive wind tunnel testing that's gone into the Anson over the winter months, and they hope to kind of cut into that domination that the Ralts have had in this division.
Well, lapping is beginning already as the leader, Davy Jones, is trying to pass car number 32, Greg Edenholm of Los Angeles, California. Unable to do so right now, and it's slowing him up just a little bit as both Johnson and Gerald Rice now have moved in on the leader, Davy Jones.
Bob, they really have. Jones had built himself a nice little comfortable cushion before he moved up to slower traffic, but the people running in second and third place, there you see Jones leading, going underneath the pedestrian bridge. He has really lost some ground now to second and third place. Let's see how Jones plays.
Oh, and Gerald Rice gets loose coming out of a corner. He rips off part of the body at the rear end of the car, and Gerald Rice is going to be out of the race. A tough break for Gerald Rice, who was running in third spot.
Well, there you can see that almost inverted teardrop shape that I was referring to earlier. It's like an Indy Lola, but also like a Formula One car, but Rice doing a real dog trot there, and I'm sure that car is damaged beyond repair.
Here's a replay of what happened as Rice was coming out of turn number 8, the rear end around just a little too far.
And that's Mike Groff in that black 14, and Jeff McPherson looking for Shelder. Well, Rice thought he had an opening, but he forgot one thing. He had to turn right also.
At Long Beach, the leaders moving past the debris left by the Gerald Rice accident. Here's the leader, Davy Jones, in the Budweiser-sponsored car number 2. Right behind him, making it a good race, is Ken Johnson. In third place, Mike Groff in car 14. Look how close this race has become.
Wow, those tight shots right down there at tire level down at the east end of the race course really gives you an idea of how quickly these drivers are sashaying these cars. through the paces here on the road course at Long Beach. And look how close Ken Johnson is, moving right up there behind Davy Jones, probably getting some effect of the draft. Now he'll try to parlay that into a pass as they go into turn number 1. He's looking for an opening. He goes to the high side, but Jones really is right in the groove. A little bit of smoke from Davy's tires, but boy, he holds a perfect line through there.
Johnson looking for every opportunity as they came down the front straightaway there, the front stretch, to find the opportunity to pass, but could not do it. And Davy Jones, who has led all the way so far, remains in the lead. But boy, he has his hands full with Ken Johnson.
Boy, he really does. Now, it's hard to tell whether or not Johnson's running quicker than Jones or just that little bit of extra boost that he got from the draft going down, the long arced front stretch was the advantage that he had. But it looked like he was running just a little faster than Davy the last time they went down the front stretch. Here's the second longest part of the course. Johnson once again, he goes to the inside.
Goes to the inside this time and again cannot pull off the pass. So he's tried both the outside and the inside grooves at various locations on the racetrack and cannot make the pass. They go into the hairpin that brings him back onto the front stretch. But still, Davy Jones remains in the lead, and car 14, Mike Groff, is not all that far behind in third spot.
Well, I think Johnson just missed a golden opportunity. That was the best chance that I've seen so far for him to take the lead. But maybe discretion was the better part of valor. I tell you, at this point in the race, you're still relatively early. He figures to have a couple of more chances to pull off a maneuver like that.
Again, the leaders are passing some of the back markers. By the way, this is a 37-lap race. 67 miles or 100 kilometers. The Super Vees always compete as close as possible to 100 kilometers. So 37 laps here on this 1.67 mile road course. And there is a good look at Ken Johnson, who has replaced Ari Leyendijk in this car that is sponsored by Provimi Veal, but no markings as such on the race car, at least at this point in the season.
Well, I was a little surprised, to tell you the truth, that Provimi Veal and not Grunewald decided to field another Super V car for this year, because he didn't really have what you would refer to as a logical driver to take over from Ari Leyendijk. But Johnson was very successful in putting together a complete promotional package, and he sold himself and the idea to Odd Grunewald and the Provimi Veal people, and they are fielding a car. And it looks like they've made a good decision because Johnson has given it a good ride. But here he is once again sneaking up behind Davy Jones. Again, the front stretch. Now watch him see if he picks up in the draft. He moves up a little bit on Davy. Now they're entering turn number 1. They've got to slow down and downshift. It's not a hairpin corner, but it requires a significant down turn in terms of speed. Johnson goes to the high side again,
but
not quite enough room.
Just like last time, he looks to the outside, but there is no way that he's going to get by Davy Jones, at least at this point. Johnson from Russellville, Alabama. As we mentioned, he began his racing career in go-karts, but then won the Skip Barber Midwest Series back in 1983, and making his appearance in Super V's this year and hopefully for the entire season. Davy Jones, on the other hand, as you indicated, Larry, earlier in the show, back from a very disappointing year in Europe last year.
They just got their way around Giappone Franca in that number 65 car, and Jones actually disposed of him just a little more efficiently than what Johnson did. Jones got away from that with about a 3 or 4 car length lead, and now Johnson really has to scramble to catch up as Jones is cutting through the slower part of the field like a hot knife through butter.
Well, they've put a car between themselves. That's the number 39 of J.W. Mitchell that is between the first and second place cars, but now Ken Johnson moves around that slower car and once again begins to close in on Davy Jones as they go down the front stretch here at Long Beach.
Well, this really is a very picturesque course, and we've had a spin.
A fun car. That's Matt McBride in car number 12. There's the average speed at the end of 10 laps, just about 80 miles an hour.
Mike Groff in number 14. As Bob mentioned, he's running in third position, a converted midget driver who's trying to keep up with Johnson and Davy Jones, but with the experience that Davy has in this type of race car, he is going to be really tough today.
The lap traffic has put a little bit of distance between Johnson and Jones. There is Jones now, and once again he has a slower car to contend with. That's Paul Natchway from Boston, Massachusetts in car number 00 that Davy Jones just passed and put a lap on.
Jones in the red 2, Johnson in the black 1. They have been dominant, but they have not been able to shake the rest of the field. Nobody's really in striking distance, but they're close behind.
And it's a good race up front, that's for sure, as Jones and Johnson have been battling for that top spot all race long. And although Johnson has been unable to pass Jones for the lead, it remains an excellent race. Back with more from Long Beach in just a moment. The top 5 at this point: Davy Jones, Ken Johnson, Mike Groff, Jeff McPherson, and Ted Prappis. At Long Beach, the leaders remain Davy Jones in car number 2, Ken Johnson running second in the spin down in corner number 11. 2 cars involved. One of them is Al Arciero in car number 96, but he begins to pull away again.
He's looking for a way to get back in the field. Oh, he pulled right in front of Jeff McPherson. I guess it was okay because Jeff was slowed significantly because of the hairpin turn, but Arciero had a very disappointing qualifying time this weekend. Almost ended his race prematurely.
The leader begins to move through traffic once again, here moving to the inside of car number 8, driven by Patrick Finney. Now he's right behind Kevin Whitesides in car number 47. That'll be the next car that goes a lap down.
Well, Kevin, of course, had an old Van Diemen last year, 1984, but he who drives for basically a family operation has decided to make the big financial move in 1985. They got a brand new 1985 chassis for Kevin, so this is a big year and probably a pretty big race for that young man, too.
Close racing there as Jones tried to go to the inside on Whitesides and put him down a lap, but was unable to. They moved down the Seaside Way, and another car is spun. That's Paul Natchway, car number 00, but he too moves away and gets back into the race. Now Jones passes Whitesides on the inside and puts him a lap down.
Boy, Bob, he is really attacking the circuit, whatever you want to call it. But at any rate, Davy Jones is really going to town. Of course, Johnson is not letting Jones let up at all. And there's a car that stopped on the left side.
That's Jeff Andretti's car, the car has been there since lap number 2 when he had the accident with Doug Clark. The car has just been sitting there all this time. It is out of the way of the groove of the racetrack, so presents no major problem.
Started to talk about Jones. Look where he is, way up there in the black stuff. That's like being on a dirt track, almost out of the groove, up into the marbles. Jones seems to be sticking anywhere he runs on this racetrack, high or low, and he is really going to it.
Justin Rabin is the driver of car 41. He is lapped by Ken Johnson. Now Johnson is behind Kevin Whitesides. And as you recall, Davy Jones had a bit of trouble getting around Whitesides. We'll see if Ken Johnson does. Well, Whitesides moves out of the way now and allows Ken Johnson to go by, and Johnson holding on to that second place position. But the race isn't nearly as close as it was just a few laps ago, mainly because of the lap traffic that both of them have to encounter.
Bob, momentum is so important in the sport of automobile racing. The few times I have driven, particularly in a go-kart, it's just amazing as you see Johnson smoking the tires a little bit as he brakes hard going into turn number 10. It's amazing how much ground you can lose on the racetrack simply because you slow down too far in a particular corner. It seems like when you make one slight little mistake that holds the RPMs down for, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, the entire rest of the field just streaks away and you're backing up, but you're standing on the throttle as hard as you can.
David Deem in car number 51 is the machine right ahead of Ken Johnson and presenting a bit of a problem for Johnson here. But I'll tell you, as we watch him go around this race course, you can tell that he is letting that car hang out as far as it will go, trying desperately to keep the distance between himself and the leader, Davy Jones, at a minimum.
Well, on the long straightaways, the front stretch and the back stretch, which actually is Seaside Way, probably talking about a top speed of around 150, maybe 160 for these little cars. So you can see they accelerate pretty rapidly. And if you screw up in one of these corners, like Ken Johnson's going through right now, and you don't have the opportunity to get on that throttle as soon as you want, as you hit one of those 2 long straightaways, it can really put you at a deficit on a particular lap.
Well, here's an interval between first and second. There's the leader, Davy Jones, and there is second place, Ken Johnson. So it's 2 or 3 seconds, but not nearly as close as it has been. And it appears to me that Ken Johnson is once again closing the gap. He is dirt tracking that car around some of these corners here in the hairpin.
Speaking about dirt tracking, Mike Groff, the former midget driver and former good driver on dirt, is still running in 3rd. Jeff McPherson is 4th. Ted Prappis, running this race with a bent wing, is running in 5th. And Kerry Bren, who started in 13th, is unofficially running in 6th position right now.
Well, you got to be impressed with both Davy Jones and Ken Johnson, both of them relatively new to the Super Vee division, but we look for big things from them throughout the 1985 racing season in Super Vees. They have pretty much dominated the activity so far today here at Long Beach. Jones is running on top, Johnson second, followed by Groff, McPherson, and Ted Prappis. Bob Jenkins and Larry Newber back in Long Beach, while Davy Jones and Ken Johnson continue to run first and second. Here is the 3rd place car. It's driven by Mike Groff, number 14. Mike from Northridge, California. and has been racing midgets and quarter midgets for the past few years.
And running in 4th position, the white car right there, the blue and white car, actually it looks blue from the back and white from the front, that is Ted Prappis. Bob, he's doing an excellent job. Remember, we saw his left front wing get damaged at the start of the race, the very first turn of the very first lap, and Prappis has been hanging right in there and runs in 4th position, doing an excellent job.
Well, Groff also rather impressive. He did start this race in 4th position and has moved up to 3rd. He moved into 3rd when Gerald Rice crashed a few laps back. Mike Groff, car number 14.
Yeah, to give you an idea how expert he became behind the wheel of a midget, a couple of years ago on Turkey Night at Ascot Park against some of the best midget drivers on the West Coast, matter of fact, across the entire country, he finished 2nd place one time.
And Ted Prappis, as you saw, is now running in 4th position. Leaders continue to be Jones and Johnson. And there is Davy Jones moving through corners number 1 and 2. Jones has led all the way in this race. To recap for you just a little bit, Gerald Rice crashed while running in 3rd spot. And very early in the race, a disappointment for Jeff Andretti, Mario's other son, Michael's brother. Jeff crashed with Doug Clark on lap number 2.
Well, there comes Jones out of turn number 5 into turn number 6. He'll go underneath the cement pedestrian walkway called the boardwalk. He's coming out of turn number 7. Then a right-hander out of turn number 8 down what we've been calling the backstretch underneath what's called the Terrace Club. That's a private club here in Long Beach. It makes it look like a tunnel that he's going through. That is called turn number 9. That's a relatively high-speed corner at the end of the backstretch. Now moving into what I've called the carousel. It's sort of like a merry-go-round, that corner. Then a hard right-hander to the hairpin, turn number 11, and down the front stretch. Now this front stretch will allow Jones to really tromp on the accelerator and move his way up through the gears and get up to perhaps above 160 miles an hour, certainly approaching 160 miles an hour before he moves down into turn number 1.
And now we can see the interval between 1st and 2nd. There is Davy Jones moving now into turn number 1. And the 3rd car here is going to be 2nd place Ken Johnson, an idea of the interval between 1st and 2nd position.
And the big thing is that Jones has been able to keep lap traffic between himself and Johnson throughout all of the last 10 or 15 laps. That's really given him an advantage. And of course, on a road course, there seldom is an overall yellow flag that does not allow the field an opportunity to bunch up. Davy's really put himself at a position of advantage here in this race.
Well, Johnson just put a lap on Paul Barnhart in car number 4 and now begins to work on Gary Rubio from St. James, New York, the driver of car number 26.
Well, Rubio is another one of the new names in Super Vee racing, actually racing out of the same shop as Peter Pander. And Rubio right now is really helping Davy Jones get a little more advantage over Ken Johnson.
Well, the yellow being displayed at that corner that Ken Johnson just went around, but it's nothing significant and will not have a yellow situation all the way around the race course. We have not had one of those throughout this entire event so far at Long Beach.
Ken Johnson, a new name to Super Vee racing. He really caught a lot of people by surprise this winter. And looks like he certainly is here to stay in that black car, number 1. One, of course, is what Arie Luyendyk earned a year ago when he was the champion of Super Vee racing, running out of the Provini Veal Stables up near Milwaukee, Wisconsin. But Johnson in the blue and white helmet, there's a nice close-up shot of Johnson at work at his office. Looks like he's really going to have a good year in Super Vee racing.
By the way, the winner of this race last year was Chip Robinson, who has gone on to IMSA GTP competition this year. Arie Luyendyk, who wound up the champion in Super Vees last year, finished 2nd, and Steve Millen was in 3rd position. But a lot of new faces on the Super Vee trail for 1985, including Davy Jones and Ken Johnson and several others.
Well, Bob, at this point, it also looks like, as we look again at Ted Prappis working his way through traffic with that cockeyed looking monster front wing of his, looks like this season should be one of the most competitive ever in Super Vee racing. There are a lot of people who figure to win a race this year. Now, everybody has a lot of confidence, but if you look at everybody's results up till now on paper, even that way when you appear or when you look at this division, it looks like a lot of people might win. Names like Jeff McPherson, who won a race last year, by the way, Dominic Dobson, Mike Miller, Mike Fulmer, John Stephanus, Tommy Byrne, Mike Cooper, all those people appear to be poised and ready to bring home the checker.
Running right ahead of Ted Prappis is the number 62 of Dave Whitney, and Mike Fulmer in the red car number 16 right ahead of David Whitney. Prappis trying to move through some slower cars. You would think that that bent wing there on the front end would have a serious effect on the handling of the car and the aerodynamics of it, but it isn't seeming to bother Ted Prappis very much, as he is now running in third place.
Well, remember that Prappis was involved in a couple of really serious crashes last year mid-season in the Super V division, so he's used to running under a handicap. Maybe if we were on a big track or an oval, that bent wing would really be a deficit problem for Prappis. But on a road course like this, I think he's able to drive over and compensate for it.
There is Mike Groff, who has dropped back to fourth position. Prappis passed him a couple of laps ago, and Groff now back into fourth spot. Yellow being displayed up there in that corner to allow the workers to get a stalled car off of the race course. There is Mike Groff moving through the hairpin turn down the front stretch here at Long Beach.
Mike Groff, one of the new faces to Super V racing in 1985, a guy that I think surprised a lot of people when he came out of the chute in midwinter and announced that he was going to run a full season Super V racing. But he has certainly shown himself to do very well here this weekend at Long Beach. And if this is any indication, with his experience, you would think that he will be also solid on the ovals. If he can do this well on the road courses and then do what everybody expects on the ovals, he might well be a force to be reckoned with for that championship.
Former midget racer Mike Groff now handling a Super V in 1985. There is car number 11, which is driven by Kerry Brin, and he is running in fifth position and not all that far behind the fourth place runner.
You know, this division, the cost are something that a lot of people are talking about. You know, everybody says that apparently it costs somewhere around $300,000 to $400,000 to field a Super V for an entire season.
25 out of 37 laps completed. The top five: Davy Jones, Ted Prappis, Mike Groff, and Kerry Brin. We'll be right back. Back at Long Beach and the Super V race, where the battle continues to be for fourth and fifth position at this time. There is Kerry Brin, who is in fifth spot, and right ahead of him is Mike Groff, who is in car number 14 and in fourth position.
Well, Bren last year drove for one of the most respected teams in all of Super V Kingdom. As we look again at Mike Groff, he drove for the Wilbur Bunce engineering team last year and did well in several races, including a 15th position in the final point standings. That was Kerry Brin in 1984.
Well, earlier in the race, it was a battle for the top spot between Davy Jones and Ken Johnson, but that race is no longer a heated one. This one is, however. It's certainly the best race on the track and involves fourth and fifth position. Now in third place, continuing to be Ted Prappis in car number 98.
Well, Bren is one of those guys who is kind of what Super V racing is all about. As we go back up and look at Davy Jones, Bren is the type of person that he seems to be using this as a stepping stone onto something else. As we look so closely at Davy Jones, who continues to put this field further and further behind him. Jones continues to do just a really sanitary job out there, but very rapid.
He has been very impressive, and Larry, you got to believe that this guy could be the next IndyCar driver that graduates to that division. I know at one time he had Formula One aspirations, but I wonder if his bad year over in Europe last year discouraged him from seeking that.
Well, the guy who owns this car is the same one who's involved in the Theodore IndyCar project. And I tell you, if Davey has the kind of year that a lot of people really think he will have, he will probably have an opportunity behind the wheel of an IndyCar for next year. By the way, the Budweiser sponsorship that you see, this is sort of a trial balloon. Paul Newman was actually involved in helping them secure sponsorship from that brewery for this race, and they said, well, if you do kind of well today, kid, maybe we'll sponsor you for some other races. I think he's passing the test.
Well, you can see the interval between I
think that was Prappis.
Yeah, Ted Prappis, as he came out of corner number 11, almost had another encounter with the concrete barrier, but got back on the throttle and continues to run in third place. And you were able to see the distance between first and second, and it's pretty major at this time. Davy Jones looks like to be well on his way to an easy victory here this afternoon if everything holds up under him.
You know, as I look at Prappis, obviously he has the same sponsorship as the Gurney Curb racing team does for IndyCar racing. This is kind of what USAC had in mind back when it started what it called the Mini Indy Series featuring Super V cars. It was hoped that a lot of the Indianapolis teams would field Super Vee cars, then called Mini Indies by USAC, so that it would almost be like a minor league of Indianapolis car racing. Prapus has done that. It's almost like a throwback to the way Super Vee racing, Mini Indy racing was supposed to be about 7 or 8 years ago.
Ted Prapus in car number 98 running in third spot. And now the number 3 car, which is driven by Jeff McPherson, is in a battle somewhat for 6th position with Steve Brin.
Yeah, Steve Brin and Jeff McPherson. McPherson was one of only 5 guys to win a race last year, and one of only 2 who has returned to the wars for the 1985 season. So Jeff, he comes, believe me, with championship aspirations. He's a graduate of off-road racing, and Steve Brin here is the younger brother of Kerry Brin.
We are 7 laps from the end of this race, and it remains an easy time for Davy Jones, at least at this point, although anything can happen here in the next 7 laps. Brin does remain in 6th position at this time, and we'll be back with more from Long Beach after this message. We're racing here at Long Beach, California today in the Robert Bosch VW Super Vee event. Big weekend of racing here in Long Beach. The Toyota Celebrity race has already been held, and that will be on ESPN. And the winner of that overall was Al Unser Jr. Here in this race, though, it's Davy Jones leading. We're focusing in on car number 14, driven by Mike Groff, who's now 4th.
You know, as I watch Mike Groff, it kind of reminds me of Ben Gustafson out of Ohio. He's used the same route, that is graduating to the ranks of midget racing, where he is obviously proficient on dirt as well as pavement to get the Super Vee racing. Benny Gustafson plans, of course, on running as many Super Vee races as he can as the series moves back into the Midwest and the East.
Mike Groff running in 4th position. Meanwhile, Ted Prapus is running in 3rd spot in car number 98, and that car has been damaged from the first corner of the first lap, but it has not stopped or slowed down any. Ted Prapus's pursuit of the leaders. He's really not within striking distance of the leaders unless they should crash, but nevertheless a good run today for Ted Prapus.
Bob, I think he's done a really superb job. As I said earlier, I don't think the performance of the machine is affected quite as much as it might be in a high-speed, constant, fast oval, but Prapus has done a really good job on a car that obviously can't be working as well as it could be if all the running gear and the suspension, obviously, were pointed in the right direction. By the way, the Anzone challenge that we talked about at the top of the show just wasn't mounted. Gerald Rice looked like it was the best opportunity for that chassis to do well today, but Kim Campbell, who entered in an Anzone, Jim Ward, Tommy Byrne, none of them have been able to match Rice's speed, and none of them have been really a factor in this race. There was one other, basically, foreign chassis, if you will, a Zephyr. At least they call it a Zephyr. It's Dominic Dobson's chassis. Dominic qualified for 9th position in this race, but crashed in practice and was not able to start. So the Ralts still sit on the throne.
Davy Jones continues to lead this race. Ken Johnson here is in 2nd position as the leaders up front remain the same. Davy Jones has led all the way, and as a matter of fact, Ken Johnson has been in 2nd place all the way in this race, and now we have 4 laps to go.
You know, we were talking about how this series has turned out graduates, so to speak, who have gone on to success in other divisions. You know, no less than 4 recent Indy 500 Rookies of the Year have come directly from Super Vee racing. Howdy Holmes, Tim Richmond, who now runs down south in NASCAR, Jose Garza among those who have gone on to Rookie of the Year honors. Jim Hickman was another one, the late Jim Hickman. Bill Alsop, Dennis Firestone, Bob Lazier, Tom Bagley, all of them have gone directly to IndyCar racing and were Rookies of the Year for the entire season in either CART or USAC racing. And most recently, Al Unser Jr. and Michael Andretti excelled in this type of racing before moving on to the IndyCar ranks. So the question becomes, who will it be next? Probably somebody that you're watching today, maybe 3 or 4 somebodies that you're peering at right now will be in the starting lineup of the Indianapolis 500 maybe next year.
Well, it's also going to be interesting to see who the Rookie of the Year is at the Indianapolis 500 Speedway this year. There's a tremendous crop of rookies that are taking their driver's test, and among them, of course, Ari Leyendijk, and I think he would have to rate up there as one of the favorites for rookie honors, at least before practice starts for the Indy 500. Here is the leader, Davy Jones, down the backstretch.
Bob, the situation in Indianapolis will certainly be something to watch. Almost every one of them is a champion, a reigning champion for another division, and they're calling this the rookie crop of champions. There's a young man who's bound to be a champion sometime very soon. We talked about how unhappy he was over the results of the experiment last year in Europe trying to run the Formula 3000 series. There were some tire problems. Things just didn't seem to fall his way, but they are certainly going his way here at Long Beach today.
That's a pretty good lead on Ken Johnson, and here is the interval as Jones streaks down the main stretch and breaks for corner number 1, and we have yet to see. There he is, second place, Ken Johnson. That's the interval, and with just about 3 more laps to go, it looks like it's going to be an easy win for Davey.
Well, Jones was one of a number of Super Vee drivers, if you allow me to call Davey a Super Vee racer. Of course, we're looking at Ken Johnson right now, but Jones was one of many drivers who performed in the New Zealand series for Formula Mondial not too long ago. And Jones, by the way, looked like he was on the road to recovery in terms of success. He was very successful down there, and he comes to Super Vee racing in 1985 in the States with the backing of Garvin Brown Racing. That's first-class backing, I might add, and he's an excellent talent with solid sponsorship and a little bit of luck. This young man could have a tremendous season.
Ken Johnson was the pole sitter for this race, out-qualifying Davy Jones by about 0.3 of a second. But at the drop of the green flag, and as the cars moved into corner number 1, Davy Jones grabbed that lead from Johnson and has held it all the way. The third place competitor right now, who is Ted Prappus, started this race in 9th spot, so it's been a pretty good advancement for Ted Prappus from 9th to 3rd, despite the fact that he bent his front wing on the first corner in the first lap.
Now, if you're wondering where Ken Johnson came from, he has had success in Super Vee racing before. He entered only just a select number of Super Vee races in 1984, but he performed extremely well at Phoenix and Milwaukee, both of those, of course, oval. So now we see that Ken Johnson can go fast, whether you're going in circles and constantly turning left, or if you're going left and right, primarily right on a road course. This guy is going to have himself one humdinger of a season.
Well, it will be interesting to see if Johnson and Jones and some of the other guys who have most of their experience on road courses do well on the ovals, because these cars do compete on both types of racetracks, from the high banks and the high speeds of Michigan International Speedway to the relatively slow speeds of the road courses.
Davy Jones rounding the hairpin, the final turn on this course as he heads for the white flag, signifying 1 more lap to go. You know, he's just one of a host of drivers who say, hey, I'm going to win my first ever Robert Bosch Super Vee race in 1985. This could be truly a very competitive season. Ken Johnson, of course, who runs second place right now, is a man that looks like he's going to win one of these races before the season's over. Mike Groff looks like he'll be right up there. Kerry Bren, Steve Bren, Kim Campbell. They can keep that race car together. He certainly has the ability to be very, very competitive. Jeff Andretti, Jeff McPherson, he won one last year. Dominic Dobson, Mike Miller. A couple years ago, he won a Super Vee race, came out of retirement. But there must be 10 or 12 drivers who think that this is going to be their year.
Well, Davey is about halfway around on his final lap of the course. Now moving through turn number 7 and through corner number 8 here on to the backstretch. Now with just about a half a lap to go, and the interval between himself and Ken Johnson is about 7 1/2 seconds. So it looks like that Davy Jones will pick up the victory here this afternoon, moving through corner number 9, now corner number 10, and braking hard to go through the hairpin, the last corner, number 11. He's on to the main stretch, and the checkered flag is coming out, and Davy Jones has won the Robert Bosch VW Super Vee race here at Long Beach, California.
And the symbol of strength comes out of the cockpit, and you can tell that Davy Jones is proud that he's won a race in his native America.
Ken Johnson moves down the front stretch and takes the checkered flag, and he winds up in second position. So a 7 1/2 second victory here this afternoon for Davy Jones over Ken Johnson. The unofficial top 5, Ted Prappus, Mike Groff, and Kerry Brin, will be back with a wrap-up in a moment from Long Beach. He took the lead going into corner number 1 on the first lap and never looked back, despite the fact that he was challenged seriously, at least in the early going, by Ken Johnson. And Davy has taken his position on the victory podium.
Well, Bob, this could be one of the most competitive seasons ever in Super Vee racing, unless that man right there wins every one. Now, that's unlikely, but you know what? He's the only one who's got a chance.
The top 10 finishers, Davy Jones the winner, Ken Johnson second, Ted Prappus third, Mike Groff was fourth, and Kerry Brin finished fifth. 6 through 10, Peter Pander, Steve Bryn, John Stepanis, David Kudrave, and Scott Atchison. So our congratulations to Davy Jones and his victory here this afternoon at Long Beach. We hope you'll join us for all of our auto racing presentations this year. For Larry Newber, this is Bob Jenkins. So long, everyone.